When we talk about American literature, there are writers who chronicle history, and then you have writers who seem to carve it into stone. Today, we are taking a deep dive into that second category, focusing on a figure known for his, well, brutal intensity and absolutely breathtaking prose, Cormac McCarthy.
And we're going right back to the foundation. His very first novel, published in 1965, The Orchard Keeper. This is really where it all begins. The style, the themes, the sheer demanding nature of his work. If you want to understand the origin point of the master stylist, this is it.
Okay, so let's unpack this. McCarthy's reputation right from the jump was huge. Our sources highlight this initial critical praise that tagged his writing with these incredibly intense descriptors. We're talking maximalism with precision crafting and ferocious energy. What does that style actually mean for a reader, especially in a debut?
Well, it means he uses 50 words where maybe 5 might do, but every single one of those 50 words is surgically precise. It's not just flowery language for the sake of it. It's language that's trying to capture the full, complex reality of the physical world. The sources say he fuses, and I love this phrase, risky eloquence, intricate rhythms, and dead-to-rights accuracy.
That's it, that combination.
It tells you everything, you know? He's both lyrical and just utterly unflinching about the violence and the decay he's describing.
That fusion eloquence and dead-to-rights accuracy, that's the contradiction that makes his work so powerful. I mean, it's a challenge to read, for sure, but you're instantly hooked by the sheer density of it.
Exactly. And maybe the highest praise, the thing that really sets him in the firmament of great Southern writers, is the comparison to Faulkner. Critics said he was one of the few who looked Faulkner in the eye without blinking and lived to write in his spirit without sounding like a parody.
Wow. That's a serious claim.
It's a huge claim, and it establishes The Orchard Keeper right away as this novel that's rooted so deeply in, regional myth and this kind of unrelenting fatalism.
And that fatalism is tied directly to the place. So our mission today is to explore how this novel, set in rural Tennessee between the world wars, interweaves the lives of 3 very distinct men. You've got Marion Sylder, the outlaw bootlegger, John Wesley Rattner, the orphan boy, and Uncle Ather, the isolated old man.
And all their lives are drawn into the orbit of a single hidden crime. It's a deep dive into violence, the relentless progression of time, and the strange hidden forms of justice that sort of emerge when the formal legal system either fails or is just completely absent.
And the landscape here isn't just a backdrop, is it?
Oh, not at all. It's the moral core of the story. It defines the limits and the laws of the people. So to really understand the narrative, we have to start with the ground they walk on.
Let's do it. Let's move immediately into that. We'll call this section 1, a harsh landscape and transient society. The setting is described as, just overwhelmingly oppressive. It's a specific area east of Knoxville, rooted in the physicality and desolation of the Tennessee mountains. What dominates the sensory experience here?
The environment is just utterly defeated. The description is so thick with heat and dryness. You have a pitiless blue sky that's just pressing down, and the road surface isn't even dirt. It's red dust, like powder from a brick kiln.
Right, so it's not just a metaphor for being broken down. The land itself is physically pulverized.
It is. It's been mined, eroded, and broken down to its most basic, useless component. And the descriptions of the wind are so evocative, aren't they? They're hot, coming up the slope like a rancid breath.
Carrying the odors of milkweed, hoglots, rotting vegetation. It makes the very air you're breathing feel corrupt.
It's the smell of exhaustion, of lingering decay. And by late July, the cultivated land just gives up. The corn stalks stand parched and sere, stalks askew in defeat. The key word there is always defeat. Every image suggests a struggle against this ancient force, and the land wins. Every single time.
And the geology itself seems to reinforce this. The way he describes the limestone is just startling.
It's one of those classic McCarthy moments where the prose becomes monumental. The limestone features, they're lying about the eroded land, and get this, schools of sunning dolphin, gray-channeled backs humped at the infernal sky.
He personifies the rock.
He gives it this massive, ancient, weary presence. It makes all the human history that follows seem so tiny, so minuscule in comparison to the time scale of the stone.
That really underscores the futility of human effort in this region, doesn't it? Even the thriving parts of nature, the cool timber stands, they have this cynical quality.
They do. They're lush, full of possum grapes and muscadine. But this life only suggests a primordial quality, some steamy, carboniferous swamp where ancient saurians lurk. It implies that life here is dark, dangerous, and just indifferent to human safety. It belongs to the deep past, not to our world.
So if the land is this monument to erosion and ancient indifference, How does the community of Red Branch reflect that?
Oh, the human settlements are intrinsically tied to the land's decay. The society is impoverished, transient, and it's all sort of orbiting Increase Tipton's ramshackle empire. The houses themselves are jerry-built shacks.
And they're squatting over their gullied purlieus, which is the eroded, filthy ground around them, like great brooding animals rigid with constipation.
What an image. That analogy alone tells you everything you need to know about the physical and psychological stagnation of the people who live there. It's like they're holding on to the waste and misery of the land.
And the decay isn't gradual, it's immediate.
That's a vital point. Before the roofs are even fully nailed down, he writes that gangrenous molds take to the foundations. A terrible plague seemed to overtake them one by one. It's as if human construction is an affront to the natural order, and the environment works instantly to reclaim and degrade it. It's a vicious, immediate cycle of ruin.
And the people themselves are almost blended into this landscape of dust and decay.
They're reduced to their most essential, desperate state. They are gaunt, hollow-eyed, and dark-skinned people. And the text notes they reproduce with such frightening prolificness, as if life's only function is just persistent, struggling replication.
Their children sit staring across the blighted land with expressions of neither hope nor wonder nor despair. It's just an empty gaze.
Utterly empty, the people come and go, unencumbered as migratory birds, which illustrates just how temporary human presence is here. The only thing that changes are the names on the mailboxes, the land's permanence against their transience.
This intense sense of disorder has to have a physical center, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it does. The Greenfly Inn. This place sounds like the perfect, structurally unsound symbol for the whole community.
It is a phenomenal description of chaos given form. So the inn was box-shaped, built incredibly precariously on scaffolding over a sheer drop.
With one critical corner just nailed to a pine tree.
Just nailed to a pine tree. And because the hollow underneath it acted like a flue, catching the wind on certain nights, the floor would waltz drunkenly, surging and buckling with huge groans.
I love that. The constant movement created an illusion entirely nautical, and it lent the patrons a sense of solidarity due largely to its very precariousness.
That's it.
They're bonded by the shared, terrifying knowledge that the whole place could just plunge into the abyss at any moment.
Their entire social order is founded on chaos and the fear of collapse. And the proprietor's method of cleanliness, well, that just reinforces the society's deep disorder. He just swept all the litter and the broken glass out the back door into the yawning gulf.
Which created a growing pile of refuse below, of indescribable variety and richness. It's called an imponderable archaeological phenomenon.
Exactly. This trash pile is the material history of the community's waste, its disorder, its forgotten objects, just slowly accumulating beneath the structure that produced it. It's a physical record of their complete lack of foresight or care.
And this structure, founded on fear and temporary solidarity, it eventually fails. December 1933, triggered by the return of a man named F. Hobie.
Yes, a moment of temporary celebration, the return of a prodigal son from Brushy Mountain Prison. It brings too many people onto the porch. And on a calm, hot night, the joists started popping like rifle fire, just snapping off in this rackety succession. The floor drooped, vaulted out over the canyon, and then pitched thunderously into the hollow.
So what happens to the survivors inside the main building? They've just witnessed this massive, terrifying structural failure. Do they come together?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But it's quite the opposite. The atmosphere immediately turns violent. The men who are torn, unclothed, and sweating from panic, they turn their subsiding fear into outrage. They fall upon each other murderously and fought far into the night.
So the collapse didn't inspire community.
It stripped away the veneer of civilization. It reduced them to raw, survivalist violence. It proves the Greenfly Inn was just barely holding back the natural state of disorder.
That sets the perfect tone for the central crime of the novel. So let's shift our focus now. We're moving into Section 2, The Killer's Return and the Victim's Last Hours, which is all about Marion Sylder and Kenneth Rattner.
Sylder's return to Red Branch is such a dramatic contrast to the pervasive decay we've been talking about. He left as a simple carpenter's apprentice in 1929, and he comes back 5 years later having followed some unknown but obviously lucrative trade. He is the image of success, mobility, and money.
He drives up in a glistening black Ford coupe, which is described as sleekly muscled and restless-looking as a tethered racehorse. He's absolutely pristine.
He is resplendent in gray gabardines, his trousers pressed to a knife edge. He's wearing expensive $30 boots that he mail-ordered from Minnesota, which signals this awareness of a world far beyond Red Branch.
And when he gets the green fly in, he stacks a handful of silver dollars neatly on the bar.
Right. He's a walking, breathing symbol of this new cash flow, the modern outlaw who thrives by exploiting the old chaos.
And against this image of sleek power, we have Kenneth Rattner, the victim, a small-time thief and vagrant. He basically embodies the decay that Sylder has risen above.
Ratner is just desperate and petty. We first see him engaging in these minuscule crimes, cruising through a grocery store, filling his pockets with candy bars, a pencil, a roll of adhesive tape.
Yes, about a tire pump, just to exit, right? Using the conversation as a cover for his thieving.
Exactly. He's morally and physically degraded. He has a skinned elbow and a shin gash that looks like tar welling. He's counting this thin sheaf of folded notes, having just ripped up his billfold.
Then we see him in a bar, and the bartender watches him drink beer, as one might watch pigs mate, his throat cords just jerking spastically. He's already reduced to this primal state of anxiety.
The narrator paints him as consumed by suspicion and fear, a man who is just incapable of looking past the immediate need for survival or petty gain. He's headed vaguely toward Knoxville, and his life, which is about to intersect with Sylder's, is defined by desperation and moral collapse.
This is where it gets really interesting. Their paths cross by chance, and it leads to Rattner riding in Sylder's glistening black coupe. And you can see Sylder's inherent suspicion immediately.
Sylder's a man who trusts absolutely no one. He stops for gas in Gainesville, gas he doesn't even need, just to test Rattner, to leave him unattended in the car.
And the faint trace of fresh tobacco smoke when Sylder gets back confirms Rattner's stayed put.
Right, but the tension is almost unbearable, because you just know, given the nature of these men in this world, that this encounter cannot possibly end well.
And the murder is swift, it's unexpected, and it is utterly brutal. It all happens when Sylder stops to change a flat tire.
Rattner makes his move then. It's a classic ambush, but he waits maybe a fraction of a second too long for Sylder to be completely bent over. He strikes the jack into Sylder's shoulder first, and then tears this ragged hole in the quarter panel of the expensive coupe. The weapon is just the mechanism of mundane repair, the tire jack.
And Sylder's reaction is described as somnambulant, almost detached, even with his arm dangling like a shattered wing. What is the significance of that slow, dreamlike reaction?
It suggests this profound level of emotional detachment, or maybe a primal instinctual response just taking over. When he stands and kills Rattner by crushing his windpipe, he observes the terror on Rattner's face and realizes something. He realizes that fear wasn't caused by the murder itself, but that it was the everyday look of the man.
Wow, so that observation strips the victim of any specific tragic status. Rattner's death is just the culmination of a life lived in fear.
Exactly. And the aftermath of the murder brings one of the most thematic lines in the book. Sylder feels that time was coming back, gaining, so that all the clocks would be right.
Wait, why does he feel a sense of cosmic realignment and order after committing a brutal murder?
That's a huge question.
It is, and it's a deep dive into McCarthy's philosophy of violence. The phrase suggests that the act of murder rectified some fundamental disharmony in the world, or at least in Sylder himself. Sylder is a creature of order, the nice-edged trousers, the neat stack of silver dollars. Rattner is chaos, theft, and anxiety.
So by eliminating the source of chaos,
Sylder feels the proper harsh rhythm of the universe has been restored. For Sylder, this act wasn't just a crime, it was like necessary metaphysical surgery.
but that philosophical calm just shatters immediately, doesn't it? It's replaced by raw panic and the physical agony of his broken shoulder, which was raging now as if loosed by the voice from the truck cab he heard approaching. That's the rapid cycling of the criminal mind, from cosmic resolution to terrified self-preservation. He barely manages to jam his feet up into Rattner's armpits and slide the body under the car as a truck rounds the curve.
The immediate need to hide the consequence just overwhelms everything else.
Everything. And the final disposal is an act of pure rage and desperate exhaustion. Dragging the body through Johnson grass and poison ivy, Sylder starts screaming at the corpse, "You son of a bitch! You rotten son of a bitch!"
He shoves the body over the edge of the spray pit, crashing it into the moldery water below. This act isn't just disposal. It's Sylder punishing the victim for forcing him into this panic, painful state.
And in doing so, he unknowingly delivers Kenneth Rattner into the care of the novel's titular figure.
Which brings us perfectly into Section 3. The orchard keeper's vigil. The spray pit, a concrete tank once used for insecticide, becomes the crypt. And Ather Ownby, the old man, becomes its unlikely guardian.
Ather Ownby is the embodiment of the old way of life. He discovers the body's presence shortly after the burial. He is not a man of law. And he makes a very powerful, deliberate choice. Not to report it, but to hide it with a small cedar tree and to actively guard it. For 6 years, he kept and guarded the secret, observing the season's work on the body.
What does that act of guarding an anonymous corpse represent thematically? It's so strange.
It's a kind of indigenous justice, or maybe stewardship is a better word, entirely separate from the state. He's keeping a sacred trust, a truth that's rooted in the land. The body becomes this fixed point in a transient world, and Ownby becomes the keeper of time and consequence, ensuring this hidden reality isn't forgotten or disturbed by the fleeting concerns of the modern world.
Tell us more about Uncle Ather Ownby's character. He lives in a small shack, constantly bone-worn from lack of sleep. And it's because of this very specific, strange fear of cats sucking his meager breath in the night. This is a man whose anxieties are ancient and superstitious.
He is a repository of history and lore. He recalls the story about a former slave woman in a place called Takalichi who gave him milfoil to have vision to read the signs of the wampus cat, a mythical creature said to scream on summer evenings.
A creature that leaves no track.
Exactly. Which implies Ownby is a seeker of truths that transcend physical evidence. But the best part is the eventual revelation of the myth.
That's where his subtle, knowing nature really shines.
It does. Years later, he revealed the screaming wampus cat was just a hoot owl, but he never corrected anyone earlier. He let folks do their speculating and arguing. He understands that the myth, the speculation, and the communal argument about the mystery are more valuable, more cohesive than the mundane truth. He guards the mystery of the wampus cat just as he guards the mystery of the corpse.
This isolated wisdom leads him to a profound act of resistance against the invasive modern world, shooting the government water tank. Why this specific target?
The tank is pure abstract power. It's on these high legs, surrounded by red signs, set up since an installation had been built on the mountain. It represents federal overreach, standardization, and the imposition of cold, remote technology onto his ancient spiritual landscape. It disrupts the natural cycle he guards.
The preparation for this act sounds like a religious rite. He honed a knife and made thin cuts around the brass base of 12 shotgun shells. He circumcised them and stored them in his coat.
It's ritual violence. He's preparing not just ammunition, but a sacred offering of defiance. By cutting the shells, he's ensuring they fire effectively, maximizing the impact of his stand. It's an act of profound, if localized, moral assertion against an external force.
And Sylder, the killer, he hears the result. 4 distinct shots. Too quick, too deliberate, at 4 a.m., silencing the birds. The guardian asserts his presence.
It's a futile act against the march of progress, of course, but it's a deeply necessary one for Ownby's identity. He reminds the mountain that the old ways and that people who guard them, they still exist and they still resist.
Meanwhile, the physical center of the old community's chaos vanishes. In 1936, the Green Fly Inn burns down.
It was a spectacle with a holiday aspect because everyone got free whiskey from the stock. But the true significance lies in the aftermath. The fire was so intense that the massive hoard of glass, the sweepings of years, the archaeological phenomenon, it ran molten.
And it fused into a single sheet, flowing down the fold of the valley like a permanent monument to chaos, replacing the crumbling temporary shack.
The land consumed the disorder, purified it by fire, and recorded it in glass. It demonstrates that while human structures are transient, their consequences, their waste, their violence, are fused into the landscape forever. The fire is a final judgment on that specific hub of moral entropy.
This leads us to Section 4, The Outlaw and the Orphan. The story now focuses on the bond between Marion Sylder and John Wesley Rattner, the victim's son, who knows nothing of Sylder's crime.
And John Wesley lives a life that defies the transient society around him. He's in this tall, severe log house that is sound, impervious to weather and time, supported by great chimneys of clay and river rock. It is a bastion of stability in a world of these jerry-built shacks. It exists outside the legal system, no tax, no rent, yet it endures.
But even in his isolated refuge, he learns these early lessons in natural cruelty. The well, hidden in weeds, has shed its rocks, and the dry bottom is littered with the bones of rabbits, possums, and cats. He remembers watching a rabbit die there.
The environment teaches him that life is defined by struggle, decay, and casual death. He is being prepared by the land for the violence that defines his world.
The great irony then begins when John Wesley enters an apprenticeship with Sylder, hauling bootleg whiskey. And the true, complex bond between them forms during the creek wreck.
Sylder's brand new Plymouth 33 coupe, that symbol of mobility and cash, crashes into the creek after taking on water from a leaky tank. He had 60 gallons of good stuff in the trunk, and he is seriously injured.
And John Wesley is the one who pulls the injured, agony-stricken Sylder from the wreck, hearing him refer to his shattered leg. I must have busted the shit out of my leg.
The dramatic irony here is immense. The orphan boy saves the life of the man who murdered his father, creating this deep, unpayable bond based on physical salvation. John Wesley's life becomes entangled with Sylder's, forging a commitment that Sylder seems to accept with a grin, recognizing the new moral burden placed upon them both.
This bond then begins to fuel John Wesley's naive pursuit of justice, reflecting his early sharp lessons in the world's violence, particularly through his trapping.
He bought traps from Sylder, owed him $2 for them. He became a muskrat trapper, but his traps are stolen by Jefferson Gifford, who is the corrupt deacon and constable.
So Gifford represents the perversion of formal authority, the state operating through petty violent crime. This teaches John Wesley that injustice is institutionalized.
It does. And we also see John Wesley claiming a $1 bounty for a dead sparrowhawk he had tried to nurse back to health, noting its hard, implacable eyes. He really identifies with that creature of defiance.
That hawk is a surrogate for John Wesley's own spirit, wild, independent, and ultimately doomed. He wants to save it, but when he can't, he demands payment. He tries to monetize his loss in defiance.
And the ultimate dramatic confrontation comes when Sylder is jailed after Gifford and 2 others assaulted him. John Wesley visits Sylder in jail, pays the $2 debt for the traps, and then vows vengeance, saying he'll get this son of a bitch to make things square.
He's trying to apply the primitive justice he's learned from the land and from Sylder. He wants to enter that heroic narrative, the classic story of vengeance.
But Sylder's reaction is furious and totally unexpected. He vehemently rejects the boy's devotion and his desire for retribution.
Why? Why would he do that?
Because Sylder knows the reality of that life. He snaps, "I ain't crippled. I'll tend to my own Giffords." And then he delivers the crucial, chilling line that just destroys the boy's worldview. They ain't no more heroes. Sylder's protecting the boy by stripping the romance from vengeance. He knows that becoming a goddamned hero means only one thing in this world: death or imprisonment.
That's the deepest wisdom Sylder offers, isn't it? A dark, necessary truth about their brutal reality. He doubles down on the rejection, lying to the boy, claiming he'd never done nothing on your account, and telling John Wesley to stay away entirely to avoid delinquency charges.
It's an act of selfish protection, but it's protection nonetheless. Sylder sacrifices the boy's admiration to save him from the cycle of violence. John Wesley shrinks back, devastated, but he still holds the conviction that it wasn't square. He knows something moral is owed.
This leads to John Wesley's final, profoundly symbolic act of rejection of the entire corrupted system, the dollar and the ashes.
He goes to the bounty office, intending to trade back the $1 he got for the hawk. The clerk informs him the hawks were all burned in the furnace because they might get a little strong after a while. That image, the wild, implacable spirit of the hawk, reduced to stench and ashes by bureaucracy, it's devastating.
And he links the burning of the hawk to the general depravity, the jailing, the beating, putting old men in the crazy house, which is a chilling foreshadowing of Ownby's fate.
He realizes the system just commodifies and destroys everything that is wild and true. The dollar is tainted money. It's payment for the destruction of defiance. So John Wesley pushes the dollar back across the counter and declares in this moment of pure individual moral clarity that he made a mistake he wouldn't for sale.
He rejects the entire economy of violence and compromise. He chooses to walk away clean, but totally alone.
That refusal of the dollar is perhaps the only successful moral victory in the entire book.
Which brings us to the final heavy movements in the narrative in Section 5. Finality and fate, where the threads of the 3 men's lives reach their conclusion.
The focus shifts back to Ather Ownby and his fate after shooting the government tank. The authorities, including the sheriff and Gifford, come for him 3 times. During the first confrontation, Ownby simply swung the door open and threw down on them with an old shotgun that had mule ears laid back viciously along the locks.
Just the display of readiness was enough to make them retreat.
Instantly. But the state can't tolerate open, persistent defiance. The second attempt is a full-on assault with 3 deputies and a county officer.
Ownby is watching from his kitchen. He shoots one deputy who's hunkered under a lilac bush, and he notes that the officer didn't yell when he was hit.
And then Ownby realizes, in a moment of grim self-recognition, that he hadn't yelled either when he shot. The violence is quiet, it's internalized, it's reciprocal.
He's behind the stove, listening to this cannonade of shots, and the visceral description of the bullets is classic McCarthy. They pass through the house with a spat-spat, leaving little balloons of yellow wood popping out on the planks.
He's just calm in the center of the storm. When they try to advance, Ownby riposts, shoots two deputies low, reloads, and waits. The sheriff eventually retreats, but Ownby knows the end is inevitable. His defense of his solitude is exhausted.
So he makes his final retreat.
In the late afternoon rain, he piles his few possessions, including a small hooked rug, onto a sledge and walks out, heading south with his old dog Scout. They become faint and pale shapes in the rain, a ghost of the vanishing past. His active resistance ends in this quiet, lonely disappearance.
And he is eventually captured and sent to the place for crazy people, the asylum.
Yes, and he's sitting there, restored to patience and a look of tried and inviolate sanctity. The irony is so profound, he was never formally charged with a crime, but they suspected he was light in the head. The state chose to institutionalize his defiance, labeling his commitment to the old ways as madness, rather than acknowledging his capacity for rational, if violent, resistance.
While Ownby's institutionalized, Marion Sylder faces his own consequences.
He's sent to Brushy Mountain Prison for 3 years, but, and this is crucial, not for the murder. His crime is running untaxed whiskey, the business he shared with John Wesley. He's punished for the fleeting social crime, not the deep, hidden personal sin. The land keeps his secret, but the state claims him for his failure to pay taxes.
And finally, 7 years after the burial and 7 months after the cremation of the Greenfly Inn, which possibly subjected the spray pit to immense heat, the body of Kenneth Rattner is discovered.
The discovery is grimly mundane. Investigators, including a man named Legwater, the county humane officer, sift the ashes in the spray pit. They're motivated by a false lead. Rattner's wife believed her husband had a fancy plate in his head from the war. She was searching for this heroic artifact, a permanent marker of his service.
Instead, they find the gruesome reality. Chalk sticks, shards of bone, a skull that is worm-riddled and hollowed and fired to the weight and tensile cohesiveness of parched cardboard.
And a fused brass zipper. Gifford confirms there was no fancy plate. The victim had no heroic marker. But here is the deepest irony. Legwater eventually realizes that Rattner's son, John Wesley, had found and claimed the platinum plate. This implies that John Wesley created or internalized the mythic element his father lacked, completing his father's tragic destiny in a way that surpassed the physical evidence. The myth is stronger than the ashes.
The narrative delivers one final, visceral act of senseless violence carried out by Legwater, the county humane officer.
After his futile, ash-covered hunt for this mythical plate, Legwater encounters Ownby's old dog, Scout, near the pike. Scout represents the last physical link to the keeper of the old ways, and Legwater just shoots the dog, which lurched forward, still holding up its head, then folded up in the dust of the road.
It's an unheroic, gratuitous coda, the final punctuation mark of the state's victory over the old, loyal world.
It's the ultimate cruelty, the destruction of the faithful old companion of the last true guardian. It is purposeless violence that serves only to confirm the end of a certain era.
So we end with the final character states. Ownby sits in the asylum, rotating a grass stem between his yellow teeth, remembering in the summer, beyond sorrow. Sylder is serving his time in Brushy Mountain, and John Wesley is simply gone.
The sources conclude with the profound realization that the new race of people on the land only knows the story of this era as myth, legend, dust. All the violence, all the effort is eventually just subsumed back into the landscape.
So what does this all mean for the ideas of justice and moral action? We've seen Ownby keep a vigil for 7 years for a man he never knew. He was a keeper of the peace, even if his means were violent. His final, poignant thought as he committed his own act of violence was, "Ever man loves peace, and old man best of all."
It suggests that true justice isn't found in the legal system that jails Sylder for taxes or institutionalizes Ownby for defiance. It's found in the commitment to a hidden truth, a commitment to the land itself. Ownby's act of guarding the body was a radical commitment to a truth that the modern, shifting world refuses to recognize.
And the nature of reality itself is constantly shifting. John Wesley, standing over his mother's grave, found the headstone to be less real than the smell of wood smoke or the taste of an old man's wine.
Right. The physical evidence, the headstone, the burnt bones, it's less powerful than sensory memory or myth, or the quiet morality of refusal. The body of Kenneth Rattner, the source of the entire drama, ultimately becomes secondary to the actions it inspired. Sylder's flight, Ownby's vigil, and John Wesley's final, clean refusal of the bounty money.
So the story shows us that human action, even violence, becomes purified by time and nature, leaving behind only these immutable markers: fused glass, the scent of wood smoke, the myth of the platinum plate.
And that leads us to our final provocative thought for you to consider as you wrap up this deep dive. In a world, as Sylder warned John Wesley, where they ain't no more heroes, is quiet, persistent defiance like maintaining a vigil over an anonymous body or refusing to participate in a tainted economy the only truly moral action left?
Think about the landscape that consumes and purifies human disorder, leaving behind only that imponderable archaeological phenomenon of fused glass and the dust of forgotten names. Is salvation found not in winning, but maybe in the final act of non-participation?
We encourage you to seek out this foundational text and experience McCarthy's intense prose firsthand. The rewards are absolutely immense.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.